Now it's my responsibility to give you some sort of palate cleanser, because we've had lunch, we've talked about the Danish housing sector. Now we're going to talk about something completely different. So I'm just going to give you 5 seconds to breathe, open up your mind, because we're going to enter into the digital realm. And with us, we have Jutta. One could argue that on the flip side of the built environment, you have the digital realm. Everything moves, or so it seems, very fast. Many new digital solutions are presented each and every day. But common with the built environment is the need for universally designed solutions, universally designed digital solutions. But how do we get there? One of the most talked about digital developments today, as I'm sure that you are aware of, is artificial intelligence. And this is something that Jutta is now going to talk a bit more about. More specifically, Jutta is going to take us into your job, looking into both the challenges but also the opportunities that comes to working with looking into artificial intelligence from an inclusive design perspective. Jutta is the director of the Inclusive Design Research Center and professor in the Faculty of Design at OCAD University in Toronto. So hopefully now you are in the digital space. And with that, my job is done, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. And I see 25 minutes. I think I have 30, right? Okay. So So as was mentioned, I am going to talk about both the opportunities and the risks of inclusive design. And for those of you who want a visual description, I'm an older white woman with gray hair and glasses wearing black. And when I talk about the opportunities and risks of AI, I'm not talking about the dystopian or utopian imaginings, but the actual risks and opportunities that currently exist. And AI, in its present form, is the ultimate case for the old adage, be careful what you wish for. It is poised to make everything worse for people that are already struggling and make everything better for people who are already doing well. At its most benign, it is a highly seductive form of digital eugenics, and I will explain what I mean by that. As a side note, just quickly, for those of you who don't know me, I'll give you a quick note on my positionality. Together with a global team, I established the Canadian School of Inclusive Design back in 1993, and our origins were in digital accessibility. And we were persuaded that we could move from a one-size-fits-one form of universal design, one-size-fits-all form of universal design to a one-size-fits-one form of universal design, recognizing that people with disabilities are complex, have intersectional needs, and that they are the best example of what I consider the world's greatest asset, our human diversity. We've always insisted on involving designing with, designing by people who experience the greatest barriers, and about not just asking people to join the game, but to help us to change the game. And all of our approaches attempt to be integrated so that they benefit all. So back to AI. At its most basic, AI is a statistical reasoning machine feeding on available data. Artificial intelligence can be seen as a power tool, like moving from a hammer and a chisel to a powerful motor. It can do the things that we have done before, but more efficiently, accurately, and consistently. And AI is simply mechanizing, accelerating, and amplifying, automating existing patterns. It is amazing at producing the typical, the popular, the normative, the predictable, the statistically average. And most people have become aware of AI with the emergence of ChatGPT, but AI has been around and deployed for decades. In fact, I started to get involved with AI back in the 80s. When people feel daunted by the complexity of AI, I like to emphasize that people control AI and characterize it as the 3 generations of how people command AI. In the first generation, we said, here are the rules, follow them literally and accurately. In the second generation, and of course, many of you have probably seen TV shows where it is taken too literally. The second generation, we said, here's available data, use statistical reasoning to optimize the selected metrics. And in the third generation, we said, here's all the data we have, you figure it out and make the new connections and determine weights based on past relationships and possible combinations. Most people became concerned and aware of AI when it reached the third generation. I'm actually more concerned about the pervasive deployment of second-generation AI in all our critical decisions. To understand the impact of AI, you need to understand something about disability and data. Over my 44 years in the field, I've been collecting data. I've been asking everyone I encounter, what do you need to thrive and fully participate in society? Because this data is so diverse and multifaceted, the only way that I can plot this is using a high-dimensional multivariate scatter plot. Don't worry. The pattern looks like a normal distribution, many bell curves plotted over each other. I call this the human starburst. It is the pattern that Pareto noticed when he created the 80-20 principle. Like a normal distribution, about 80% of the needs are clustered in the middle 20% of the space. And in the remaining 80% of the space are the remaining 20% of the needs, and they move further and further apart. Data points in the middle are close together, meaning they're more alike. And data points at the periphery are further apart, meaning they're more different from each other. And you can guess where the needs related to disability are. They're definitely not in that center. And so because of economies of scale and scaling and the need for scaling and economics and all of those things, conventions like the 80-20 rule, which say that spend 20% of the effort and you'll get 80% of the rewards, and ignore the difficult 20%, anything that is designed conventionally will work if you are in that middle, or if your needs are in that middle. Becomes more difficult to use as you move away, and if your needs are out at that periphery, they don't work and they're not designed for you. And the AI systems are very similar. Any statistically determined prediction is highly accurate in the middle for the average and for the mean, inaccurate as you move from the middle, and wrong as you get to the edges. And AI is simply amplifying, automating, and accelerating a pattern that already ripples through almost every aspect of our lives, creating greater and greater disparity, whether it is in our designs, the products that make it to market, the knowledge we recognize as scientific evidence based on quantified statistical power. There's a lot of academics here who know about statistical power and publishing. Our education, which pushes towards standardized learners. Our systems of employment, which attempt to create replaceable workers. And our systems of governance. For in defending democracy, we've often reduced that ideal democracy to one person, one vote, and majority rules, which means that the critical needs of the marginalized minorities will be overpowered by the trivial needs of the majority. What we fail to take into account, and you all know that, is that the only thing that actually is predictable is death and disability. You will either get a disability, or someone you love will get a disability, or you'll die. And we all have needs out at that outer jagged edge. Which means that if we consider the hugely diverse margins, we leave room for change and growth when the unexpected happens. And innovation is found at the edge, not the complex middle. And people at the edge are the first to detect the weak signals of crises to come. If you have a disability, the opportunities and risks of any new disruptive technology are at the extremes. And the extreme opportunities mean that people with disabilities are often the poster children of AI. We are used to justify the risks. A common theme voiced by leading developers, especially related to the geopolitical arms race and the economic imperative of moving forward with technology, is to trust us and to break things, to make mistakes, to push forward. To have the right to ask this of us, you need to have a deeper understanding of the relationship between disability and technology. We know the saying that for most people, technology makes things convenient. For people with disabilities, technology makes things possible. And therein lies an awesome responsibility. Technology is relied upon to speak, read, write, learn, affect the world, navigate the world, eat, express love, remember, plan, breathe, and live. Our relationship to technology by necessity is more intimate. It is essential because we have no choice. It is what makes things possible. This relationship also makes us more vulnerable. We should not have to give our trust to an abusive partner. We are disproportionately vulnerable to the mistakes and to the breaking. And beyond guarding our homes, it is implanted in our brains, and I have some implanted right now, and in our vital organs. It is undeniable that AI offers extreme opportunities for everyone. It can recognize speech, gestures, patterns, find a target object or pattern, match and label objects, remember forever and remind on time, sort possible paths to find the optimum, detect common mistakes and connect them. These can make a life-changing difference for people with disabilities. AI is very good at mechanizing the formulaic. AI is promoted to act as robotic personal service workers, create intelligent prosthetics, restore vision, and even read your mind through your EEG patterns. A new AI technology is announced almost every week. Among the current functions, there is AI for image-to-text description, real-time captioning, sound filtering, voice control, personal voice output, exoskeleton optimization, gesture control, and I'll share these slides so you can look up the products. Smart home systems and robotic assistance, memory and recall, simplification and summation, writing support, brain-computer interface, not to mention AI assessment and AI accessibility remediation and repair. But even with these amazing systems, there are some flies in the ointment. AI makes people vulnerable to privacy breaches, and data sharing agreements often extend to third parties with undeclared motives. Video capture systems surveil the users and others surrounding the users. And apps often come with targeted advertising. The AI pushes the users towards stereotypical responses or behaviors. High school students using the system have said that the pressure to be typical is increased because AI can hide your uniqueness. Does it make it harder for people who can't use or afford the AI? Does it decrease the tolerance for personal quirks and differences? Also, the benefits of these amazing AI systems are inverse to the need. It works the worst for people that need it the most. If your speech is further from the average, if you are blind and the product labels you want to identify are in a non-English language, or you are in a poor environment, in the workplace, it's often assumed that an AI tool will work for anyone with a given disability, not recognizing that the effectiveness is variable. Because much of the intelligence is in the cloud, they consume a great deal of bandwidth. And this is not a cost that most disability financial benefit programs will pay for, not to mention the environmental costs of AI. Also, the goal of AI is to sound believable. It isn't to tell the truth. It produces believable bullshit or pastiche. It sounds most confident when it repeats stereotypes. And the believable untruths can be quite hurtful. After all, what is the data that we have fed AI about disability? It is the horrifying cocktail of ableist slurs. Disabled people are seen as inferior, unattractive, tragic, victims suffering. There are plenty of bad jokes involving disability. And then we have benevolent ableism, or what has been called inspiration porn. None of this makes a good data pool. But the protections against this tend to backfire. Captioning toxicity filters that replace words deemed to be toxic with misleading, innocuous words prevent students who need captioning from understanding topics, unsensitive topics. People with facial differences are deemed toxic and have been canceled from Instagram. And not to mention that disability and sex is frequently censored. But I'm most worried about the extreme risks of AI. AI is also an infrastructure of statistical discrimination. My first alarm happened about a decade ago, or more actually. This is a story that I've told many times, and I've seen retold by others. So apologies to those of you who have heard it before. Back in 2013, we were engaged with the Ministry of Transport in the province of Ontario and asked to test a number of machine learning systems that were going to guide vehicles through intersections, tell them to stop, move forward, or turn. And I decided to test them with a capture of a friend of mine who pushes her wheelchair backwards. She's very efficient, she's very fast, she's very erratic, and people seem to tend to think that she's lost control and will often push her back to the part of the intersection that she came from. And so when I tested it, all of the machine learning engines that I was testing chose to proceed through the intersection, and if they had been deployed, they would have run her over. They all said, don't worry, these are immature models. We haven't yet trained them on data regarding people in wheelchairs and intersections. Come back when we've fed them a lot of data on that, and they know more about that. And lo and behold, when we came back to test the machines again, and they had trained them on a great deal of data about people in wheelchairs and intersections. They chose to run her over with greater confidence because they were confident that people in wheelchairs were moving forward. And this is the main point of the story, counter to the call to address bias by filling data deserts or to achieve proportional representation of excluded minorities in the data sets. This will not address the bias against outliers or the bias of statistical reasoning. This is of greatest concern when AI is used to find, match, sort, label, measure, optimize, calculate, analyze people at scale. There's a problem, and we are the collateral damage. The way AI is currently designed is hostile to difference, and disability implies difference from the average. Different ways of doing the job, different digital traces, different work and education history, different social media topics, an entangled profile of many differences, and bias toward the optimal pattern means bias against difference. AI is propagating the discrimination that was there faster, more efficiently, and more accurately. It is homogenizing toward a monoculture. And Irish potato farmers, and I know there's some Irish people here, can tell us that monocultures can be felled by a single blow. The same pattern is happening with all life-altering, difficult decisions. AI is used by over 90% of organizations in hiring, according to the EEOC. AI is being applied and offered to competitive academic admissions departments, to beleaguered health providers in the form of medical calculators and emergency triage tools, to policing, to parole boards, to immigration and refugee adjudications, to tax auditors, to loans, to mortgage officers, to security departments. As AI gets better or more accurate in its identification of the optima in hiring or admissions, for example, AI gets more discriminatory and better at eliminating applicants that don't match the optima in some way. This leads to bad, unfair, inaccurate decisions. And if you are an outlier, you are also subject to false flagging and suspicion systems such as tax fraud detectors or security systems when traveling. At a community level, we have evidence-based investment by government, AI guiding political platforms, public health decisions, urban planning, emergency preparedness, and security programs. None will decide with the marginalized outlier, and outliers will be marked as security risks. These are monumental, life-changing decisions, but even the smaller, seemingly inconsequential decisions can harm by a million cuts. What gets covered by the news, what products make it to market, the recommended route provided by the GPS, the priority given to supply chain processes, what design features make it to the market. Since my alarm a decade ago, I've been monitoring harm and incident databases, and unfortunately, it's become a depressing exercise in I told you so. Disability is disproportionately affected by AI discrimination. Parents with disabilities are falsely flagged as unfit. There's false positive tax audits, false positive security flagging, excluded from optima, filtering in employment and education, biased credit and asset rating, unfairly denied mortgage and loans, unfairly high insurance rates, and it goes on. The worst is iatrogenic death and illness because of medical calculators. Of course, this harm predates AI. The statistical reasoning as the means of making decisions does harm. And yes, I'm an academic. It does harm to anyone not like the statistical average or the statistically determined optima. If the AI roadmap is adapted, we will be creating an infrastructure of digital eugenics. Assuming that what we know about the majority applies to the minority does harm. And unfortunately, it is more than addressing data gaps, removing human bias from algorithms, removing stereotypes from labels and proxies, which the AI ethics industry is insisting will make something ethical. The problem is that even the systems intended to remove bias, reduce risk, and prevent harms use statistical reasoning. There's this burgeoning AI ethics industry is certifying AI as ethical without considering the risks to outliers, such as people with disabilities. The harms to people with disabilities are insignificant when determining impact metrics and thresholds in impact assessments, even with the EU AI Act. Risk benefits assessors have shown that it would take many outlying fatalities to signal a significant risk in error testing and risk-benefit analysis tools. While it works for other discriminated identities such as gender or race, there are no bounded data clusters for disability because everyone with a disability is unique. The specific risks will be dismissed. While many have focused on privacy, the reality is that privacy protections don't work if you are very different or highly unique. While people with disability are the most vulnerable to data abuse and misuse, de-identification at source doesn't work, because you will be re-identified, especially if the data is aggregated. Differential privacy, which is the alternative, will remove the helpful specifics that allow the AI to work for you. And most people with disabilities have already been forced to barter their privacy for essential services. We need to go beyond privacy, assume that there will be breaches, and create systems to prevent the data abuse and misuse. We need to ensure transparency regarding how the data is used. The gift of AI is that it offers us a magnifying mirror of our current conventions and assumptions, giving us an opportunity to reflect on our trajectory. Do we wish to speed in the direction our society is currently moving? How are we then addressing trustworthy AI? Some of the things we're doing is we're flipping the prioritization with tools like word clouds, where, lo and behold, it is not the popular, the majority word that grows and moves to the middle, but the novel, unique minority word or phrase. We are inverting the dominant algorithms to make decisions and offer choices, from data exploitation to data exploration, from homogenization to diversification. What perspectives are you missing in your team when you're hiring? And creating tools to reduce harm by signaling when a model will be wrong or unreliable, because the person being decided about is far from the mean or average in the training data. And we take the top off the Gaussian curve to remove the privilege of being the same as the majority. So the model needs to pay greater attention to the breadth of the data. And we are, in terms of natural language processing and large language models, we're creating a language model for people who need it the most. Children and adults who are non-speaking and use symbol-based semantics, shorthand to communicate, starting at the edges for greater innovation and stretching the system to be able to address a much larger spectrum of needs. And we're filling the regulatory vacuum with a regulatory standard for the Accessible Canada Act called the Accessible and Equitable AI Standard, to be referenced in the EU as well. The first phase is drafted and has been passed by an International Standards Committee of Accessible Standards Canada, and it has 4 parts: accessible AI, equitable AI, organizational processes that support accessible and equitable AI, and education and training. The intention is to layer on top of existing standards and regulation, making sure that disabled people can participate in all aspects of the AI lifecycle, not just as consumers and subjects of AI, but planners, designers, developers, evaluators, and implementers, and to address statistical discrimination and the cumulative harm that comes about by many harms that are deemed to be low impact or low risk, and ensuring that AI education is accessible and covers accessible and equitable AI, and that AI systems actually learn from the harms and incidents. The intent is that AI progress at the speed of trust. And we know that intelligence that works with the edge of our human scatterplot is better able to adapt to change and respond to the unexpected, detect risk, transfer to new contexts, results in greater dynamic resilience and longevity, will reduce disparity, and may hold the key to our survival. And thank you, and I would love to continue the conversation.